The spiritual world, the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, which is known as Krishna Loka, Goloka Vrindavan, is described here. In the spiritual sky, there is no need of sunshine, moonshine, fire, or electricity, because all the planets are self-luminous. We have only one planet in this universe, the sun, which is self-luminous. But all the planets in the spiritual sky are self-luminous. The shining effulgence of all those planets, called Vaikuntha, constitutes the shining sky, which is known as the Brahma Jyoti. Actually, the effulgence is emanating from the planet of Krishna, Goloka Vrindavan. Part of that shining effulgence is covered by the Mahat Tattva, the material world. Other than this, the major portion of that shining sky is full of spiritual planets, which are called Vaikunthas, chief of which is Goloka Vrindavan. As long as a living entity is in this dark material world, he is in conditional life. But as soon as he reaches the spiritual sky, by cutting through the false, perverted tree of this material world, he becomes liberated. Then there is no chance of his coming back here. In his conditional life, the living entity considers himself to be the lord of the material world. But in the liberated state, he enters into the spiritual kingdom and becomes an associate of the Supreme God. There he enjoys eternal bliss, eternal life, and full knowledge. One should be captivated by this information. He should desire to transfer himself to that eternal world and extricate himself from this false reflection of reality. For one who is too much attached to this material world, it is very difficult to cut that attachment. But if he takes to Krishna consciousness, there is a chance of gradually becoming detached. One has to associate himself with devotees, those who are in Krishna consciousness. One should search out a society dedicated to Krishna consciousness and learn how to discharge devotional service. In this way, he can cut off his attachment to this material world. One cannot become detached from the attraction of the material world simply by dressing himself in saffron cloth. He must become attached to the devotional service of the Lord. Therefore, one should take it very seriously that devotional service, as described in the 12th chapter, is the only way to get out of this false representation of the real tree. In chapter 14, the contamination of all kinds of processes by the material nature, it is described. Only devotional service is described as purely transcendental. The words Paramam Mama are very important here. Actually, every nook and corner is the property of the Supreme God, but the spiritual world is Paramam, full of six opulences. The Katha Upanishad also confirms that in the spiritual world, there is no need of sunshine, moonshine, or stars. Na tatra suryo bhati na chandra tarakam. For the whole spiritual sky is illuminated by the internal potency of the Supreme Lord. That supreme abode can be achieved only by surrender and no other means. Srila Prabhupada describes devotional service. Always with an added qualifier or with an added clause. So Srila Prabhupada always talks about being engaged in the activities of devotional service or the limbs of devotional service of Navida Bhakti. While maintaining a desire, a longing to meet Krishna. In the material world also, there are, whenever success mantras are being talked about, there is a talk about being relentless. There is a talk that yes, one should not be satisfied with anything in between other than the final end result what one wants to achieve. One should not stop anywhere in between, not reconciliate with any kind of compromise. Being relentless. So they say, yes, those who are achievers, they are relentless. They have a very lofty goal, a very lofty ambition, and they don't sit down anywhere. So this is success mantra being talked about in the material world, actually. So we see that the interestingly, very interestingly, actually, we can see that we need a certain kind of pull to make us move forward. We can see in our day-to-day lives. We can see everyone. We can see even people materially. Everybody needs a certain kind of pull to move forward. To and that pull gives the motivation. That pull gives the motivation. Therefore, you will see the material propaganda. In the material propaganda, you know, there is a huge amount of emphasis on or encouragement for people to dream big, to dream high. Because they understand that if the person dreams high, then only he will run. The high and the lofty dream is required to run, is it not? Otherwise, one will not run. And if one does not run, uh, then nothing moves forward. It's very difficult to move forward, is it not? So we see whenever there is an ambition, there is motion, and a person is ready to mold himself, ready to force himself, and there is productivity. When there is no such potential available, when there is no such no dream available, that potential difference is not there, between where we are and what we want to achieve. And when that potential difference is not high enough, the person just drags on. There is not much change in life. The index remains pretty much the same. The index remains pretty much the same. So this is this is an interesting aspect. This is an important and interesting aspect. Even actually, now we may say, okay, that why the the talk of the spiritual world becomes so prominent, because anyways we cannot understand spiritual world much, and it is a different plane altogether, where we cannot relate with it with our the mind and senses in that way. So what is the prominent position of the spiritual world? This is goal setting, and this goal setting is very important, because this is where the potential comes actually to make a difference, to move forward. There is no change which comes about unless and until there is this band gap. There is this great difference between where we are, what we are, and what we desire to achieve. Therefore, the mantra is think, dream big, dream high, and make it happen. Then strive to make it happen. So in entrepreneurship also, they always talk about it, that don't think of a mediocre company, think of setting up $1 billion empire, don't start with setting a don't start with a thought process that okay, I will set up a company and round the corner of my lane, and it will service my my locality. No, it will they think, no, be a world player right from day one. Right from day one, be a world player. So think of setting it up everywhere, here and there, because then only their person will move. Otherwise, he will not move much. There is no much impetus to move forward. Like for example, there is this talk by the uh, yeah. So the first Olympic gold medalist from India, the the shooting he was doing, right? Hmm. Abhinav Bindran. So he, no, so if you see his interviews, so now it took him 3 to 4 Olympics actually to win a gold. I think 3 Olympics, I think. So he started from 17, 18 years and maybe 3 Olympics. Uh, it took him to get the gold. It was the third Olympics in which he got the gold actually. So that and so that was going on. Now he talks about his the phase after he won the Olympics gold. He talks about that actually his life became blank and void. His life became blank and void. But because still now he had a goal, he was moving forward. He was just day and night just working hard for it and looking forward to it, and nothing else in the world had any meaning and any sense to him. And all. Now he achieved it. No, that gold was there in the pocket. He was there in the photographs for a few weeks, few months, and then that's it. Things move forward. So now what to do? So he said his life became complete blank. So he was in a mental state of complexity. And he was not able to reconcile or digest that situation, that now what to do. So he talks about it. There are a lot of interviews and articles where he mentions about it, that he got completely lost, that what else to do now, like that. So the point is that as long as we cherish the goal, we can always move forward. So only as long as we cherish the goal, we can move forward. That is the point which is being reiterated here. That is why Srila Prabhupada is mentioning here in this pulpit that one should understand and meditate and contemplate on the nature of the spiritual world. And therefore, Prabhupada makes this celebrated statement that one should be captivated by the information which is given in the spiritual world. One should be looking forward to it. One should be looking forward to it, because unless one is captivated, there is no endeavor, there is no force or pressure to drill oneself through. Actually, that is the point. So we will see that this is how how the mind works, or how our internal state works is always is a science, and we need to know that science. So how to make things happen, how to make the change happen, how to make the how to mold. So there is always this burning question: how to mold oneself, how to get that zeal, that enthusiasm, that force, that impetus. That force and that impetus. So how to make that happen? Srila Prabhupada explains that very powerfully, stage by stage. No. Srila Prabhupada explains that very powerfully, stage by stage. The first principle which Srila Prabhupada talks about very prominently is bombardment. So how to make that happen? One should bombard oneself with the spiritual stuff, with the spiritual content, that with the details of the spiritual content. And therefore actually we see the shastras are giving us over flooded information about the details of the spiritual world, the details about the pastimes of the Lord. There is, like, if you see Bhagavatam, or if you the different scriptures, if you see Bhagavatam also, there are sections where actually the beauty of the Lord is described. Third canto Bhagavatam describes the beauty of the Lord. The whole chapter, just the beauty of the Lord is described, and the Lord's eyebrows, and what kind of mala the Lord is wearing, and what is the Lord's smile, and how what is the shape of his earring, and the whole chapter is describing that, verse after verse. Actually, is it not? Similarly, in CC also you can find there is a beauty of the the darshan of Lord Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya is given, and amazing and amazingly details. So why? Because this bombardment is required. Similarly, when we see the prayers of acharyas, we see how elaborately they glorify. And therefore it is said with Uttama Shloka. So with choicest words, they are glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then there are these alankas, and there are these beautiful kind of analogies, by which they are glorifying. Like yesterday, I was touching on Chaitanya Charitamrita, the description where Lord Nityananda came in the dream of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. And then he is just describing, and he's describing Lord Nityananda as a maddened elephant. All his moves were like a maddened elephant. He's maddened by love of God. And after some verses, again he says, Lord Nityananda was like a maddened lion. He was roaring in ecstasy of Chaitanya Prem. So he's a maddened elephant, and then he's a maddened lion, and so very amazing kind of alankars and analogies, and the picturization. So why? Because this bombardment is required. This is the first step. The more we get bombardment, the more we get pointers to to get hooked. The more we get pointers to get hooked. So that's why bombardment. This bombardment also is brought about by association. Bombardment of association. Yeah, bombardment of association. Is it not? So that somewhere or the other things start getting hooked. Somewhere or the other things start getting hooked. So this is the first step, the bombardment. Because we see this aspect, that aspect, this aspect, that aspect. It's amazing. And therefore you see there is such detailed description. Now you read Burma Samhita, there is such detailed description. It is in such details talking about, okay, this mantra is forming the pivot, and this mantra is forming the lotus petal, and this mantra, this is how the spiritual world, the hexagonal triquadrantal, yeah, so the spiritual foliage, amazing actually. So like you read Brahma Samhita, it is so amazing. Like why it is so amazing? Because even though we may not understand the meaning of the word, like that, but it really excites. That it's powerful. It's awesome. So Brahma Samhita purports. Right, we read only 3 actually. Is it not? Till now, in our syllabus we have kept only 3 verses and 3 purports. But if you read it, it's so amazing. One really can get excited about it, that yes, this is what it is it not? So the bombardment is the first principle actually, because we need to get captivated by things, and captivation is only possible in bombardment. Similarly, it is said that actually one should meditate, one should live, one should hear about. Like if you see one of our prominent syllabus, about one of the prominent threads in our syllabus for the training syllabus and the training module is actually to get to know the details of the lives of the acharyas. And therefore, very prominently, we emphasize on this point that one should develop this habit of living with the acharyas. So how do we live with the acharyas? By hearing about them, by hearing about them, the lives, their prayers, their dedication. So why? This is a bombardment that is required. That's the first step. So where it gets hooked. So we need some of the other hook that, okay, oh, this is exciting, let me go deep into it. So after bombardment, the next step is the dive. The next step is the dive after bombardment. So the dive means that now we need to churn it. Now we get excited about it, but then now we need to churn it, spend time on it, then go into it and take it up, dive. So this is the second step for bringing about the captivation, actually. For bringing about this captivation, the dive. So therefore you'll see Radha Shambhu speaks about that, he speaks about that actually Bhagavatam is full of nectar. It's an ocean of nectar actually. So he says, okay, when you're reading Bhagavatam, then you come across some verse, we like it. Radha Shambhu said, as soon as you get excited about a verse, then I should immediately memorize it. Why? Dive, is it not? So the bombardment will give us some exciting spikes, but those spikes will not remain for long if we do not dive. If we do not dive. So we have all experienced excitement in Krishna consciousness, but that comes and goes, it comes and goes, it comes and goes. So how to sustain? The dive will sustain it. Then it will not go, it will remain. It will remain, is it not? That's the point. So dive, the more we churn it, the more it the more it attracts, or the more its effect and impact comes on our hearts. That is the subject matter. So we can see that In fact, this dive goes into the domains or goes into the trajectories of how does the mind or our internal states function. So you will see our internal states always function by churning and contemplating. By churning and contemplating. This is how things grow in our hearts. This is how we move. The motion is brought about by, so that means what? The churning or the contemplating actually aggravates the potential. And when the potential is aggravated, it brings about the motion. This is the principle. Materially also this principle works. Materially also this principle works. The more one churns it, thinks about it, immediately it brings about, it increases the potential. So if you do not think about it, if you do not speak about it, if you do not discuss about it, it doesn't come about. That's the point. So therefore dive. So many times we say, okay, I'm not getting sufficiently excited, but no, I'm not getting sufficiently, I'm not bubbling. There was a time when I was bubbling in Krishna consciousness. Today I am not able to bubble. Now the question is, who's responsible for it? No, if you see, no, we are ourselves are responsible for it. Why? Because many times we are not doing the homework which we are supposed to do. Is it not? So there is a simple two-step formula. Okay, not bubbling means maybe there is no sufficient bombardment. How to bombard? How to bombard? Get out some good association. Is it not? Come out of your, come out of your whatever fixed routine and take some good association, and then you get some stuff to churn. Is it not? Right? No, that's first step, and the second step is dive. We have to do the homework. Is it not? Where are we churning it? Where are we churning it? Where are we contemplating on it? So how will we get excited about it? No, we'll just get riveted or rigid, solidified. And in solid state, there is no move actually. Is it not? So many things. So we can understand this is science. It depends on our homework. It depends on our endeavor. It depends on our endeavor. So this is what we can see. And therefore, the Lord is very prominently talking about that you see the spiritual world and you establish the spiritual world as a goal, actually. And spiritual world is a place. And that's why it's being talked about. That okay, spiritual world is a place. Having gone there, one doesn't need to come back. It is self-luminous. That means what? That now you see the point that even materially people feel that okay, if I come to that situation, it can actually take me out, it can actually drive me forward, and things like that. But now what happens is that because material world is temporary and any kind of manifestation is temporary, so therefore actually any journey which we make gives relief, if at all, only temporarily. That's what happens. But in spiritual life it is not like that, because spiritual world is vasta vastu. Any kind of motion towards a spiritual goal will give a permanent impact, and therefore once having experienced that impact, we don't need anything else. In the material world, we always want something more, something further, more, change, something different, something further, something ahead. Why? Because everything material gives us whatever it has to give, if at all it has to give, only temporarily. And therefore, after the temporary satiation is done, if at all the satiation happens, we need further. Is it not? We need further. Therefore, a person is always running around. Therefore, a person is always hovering around. Whereas spiritual world is not like that, because the impact and the effect is not temporary. And that is why, having experienced the spiritual taste, one doesn't need anything else. This very much relates with the, with the literal explanation of the spiritual world, that spiritual world is self-luminous. No other factor is required other than bhakti. Is it not? It very nicely relates with the literal description of the spiritual world also. It is self-luminous. We don't need anything else. No. Yeah, we don't need anything else. That is the point. Uh, so one should look forward to it. Is it not? So therefore, one should be looking forward. Actually, one should be looking forward, and that's why Prabhupada says one has to see. Prabhupada is talking in the purport, and when he's telling about no, one should be captivated by this information. Prabhupada is telling one should search out a society which is dedicated to Krishna consciousness. One should learn how to discharge devotional service. In this way, he can cut off his attachment to this material world, and that way, one can develop the detachment to this material world, attachment towards the spiritual world. So now there is a question. The question is that, okay, how can one maintain or reconcile the fact of Janmani Janmanishware with cultivating a burning desire to go back to Godhead? Yes. So Mama Janmani Janmanishware Bhavata the Bhakti Rahetu. I just want to go on serving, with cultivating a burning desire to go back to Godhead. Yes. So, uh, yeah, so when we say, actually, now if you see, both of them are speaking about the same thing. Why both of the aspects are speaking about the same thing? Because the Janmani Janmanishware is the way in which we can be riveted to or we can be riveted to the goal that I need to go to the spiritual world. Like that. Or in a more mature sense, the Janmani Janmanishware is the way in which we can situate ourselves in the spiritual world. So spiritual world is not just a physical location. Yes, it is a physical location, but more than that, it is a state of consciousness. Entrance to the spiritual world is a state of consciousness, and therefore we see that the acharyas, although they may be roaming around in a mortal body, but then their consciousness is completely in the spiritual world. So they are participating in the spiritual world, being in the material body. So there's no material for them. There's nothing material for them. So that state is no. So one locks that state by that Janmani Janmanishwari consciousness. That I just, life after life, I want to go on doing that service. So this Mama Janmani Janmanishware is not just the platform of Nishtha. It is one step further to Nishtha. No. So yes. So yes, the first verse of Shikshashtakam is one step beyond Nishtha. It's a platform of Ruchi. It's a platform of Ruchi actually. So that is the way. One just wants to go on service, serving the Lord life after life, because you understand that in this service I am this service is making me situate myself or lock myself in the spiritual world. So spiritual world is all about dynamic reciprocation and serving Krishna and pleasing Krishna, is it not? Therefore, a devotee doesn't want to give up service. He doesn't want to give up association, and life after life, he just wants to do that, is it not? You see, Acharya's prayers are also talking about that life after life. I just want the association of devotees. I want the remnants of Vaishnavas. I just want to serve them, and that's all I want. So, because that is spiritual world exactly. That is where we lock ourselves to the spiritual world. So, this is the point which is being explained here. Uh, Yes. So, Yes, so we need to, so we need that constant, no, so we need an atmosphere in this material world. Actually, there is a downward pull, and this affects everyone and anyone. So only when, but the intensity of practice of Krishna consciousness in the association of devotees can create that atmosphere. So then that atmosphere will ensure that we are in the spiritual world. That atmosphere creates a spiritual world. This, on this basis only Prabhupada is talking about that. You see, my the every ISKCON temple is Vaikuntha. Why it is Vaikuntha? Because there is association which is available. Because there is, the priority to serve Krishna which is available. Everyone has that exclusive top priority to serve Krishna, and we situate ourselves there, and not just statically situate, but dynamically situate ourselves there. Is it not? Static situation means that okay, we jump in, but then everybody moves forward and then we remain there. So that is static situation. Dynamically situate ourselves because everything is moving in service to Krishna. We also have to move. Is it not? Like that. So that is the point. So, and therefore actually one has to see that, so therefore one has to be attached. Prabhupada says, in the purport here, one should become attached to the devotional service of the Lord. The process of bhakti manifests the spiritual world. The process of bhakti ensures that we are in the spiritual world. So because it is a plane of consciousness. It is a plane of consciousness. So therefore actually when there is this now what happens is, the very interesting point is, when there is this band gap potential, then everything else in this world will become a point. It will become like a pointer or indicator to propel us towards our goal. you know just like, see, this is the material matrix. This is how things go. When there is a big band gap potential which we are aspiring for, every situation, everybody in this world will give us will act like a pointer to propel us to that goal. Just like a mad businessman, anything he sees, anybody he sees, he only sees money in that. Is it not? So this is the point actually. This is the point. So then this whole talk about seeing everything in relationship with Krishna will come about once we lock